Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Seeing Jazz. I'm Hrayr Attarian. I'm an amateur photographer and a member of the Jazz Journalists Association. Today, we're speaking with photographer John Abbott. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Can you please start by telling us how you came to photography and why music photography?
Sure. Well, I didn't really pick up a camera until college. But in college, all of a sudden, since I wasn't going to be a doctor, I was pre-med for a while. So my wife who I met in college was a dancer. And so I was surrounded by an artistic community of people at a young age. And so photography became sort of my passion in my senior year. And you mix that with most all of us here are music lovers from when we're in the crib, right? So for me, it was the same. My father was a great piano player. He had records of Ahmad Jamal and Beethoven and Prokofiev and Ramsey Lewis, you name it. And so you put that together and you have, the perfect mix. So my wife was also very sophisticated in her musical taste, more than me. She was a dancer. So in a way, she turned me on to she had all these recordings of Ella. She had all these recordings of Ray Charles that I hadn't heard, Mose Allison. She would dance to them, she would play them. So you kind of put that together in a primordial soup. And for me, that was sort of the beginning. And I couldn't stop from that point in from my teens through my early 20s. So as a photographer, I basically I went to School of Visual Arts after college in New York City. And that was a mixed bag for me because it was a little slow and I didn't want to sit in class anymore. So then I started assisting other photographers in New York, most of whom were magazine photographers, portrait photographers. They were also fashion people. And they taught me a lot of things, right? Lighting, lenses, equipment. So there was a few, specifically one who was probably my main influence. He's still alive. His name is Alan McQueenie. He's an Irish photographer from Dublin. One of the things that was really important about Alan, besides his ability to see and talk, was his ability to deal with people. And he did things with people that I had never seen other photographers do. He acted and on a peer level, so that when we would photograph Beverly Sills or Henry Kissinger or Jerome Robbins or any of these people that he was doing for assignments, I realized, oh, he's connecting to them on this level. And you can do that. So I then became a photographer, worked for New York Magazine, Newsweek, Time, Fortune, Business Week, these kinds of things. But ultimately, that wasn't enough. I almost needed to bring the music back into it. So I had an affiliation with music in New York, George Wein, Charlie Bourgeois. Hopefully those names mean something to everyone here. Charlie said, you can come shoot at our concerts, you can shoot backstage. And I thought, wow, this is great. So in addition to all my assignments that I was doing commercially and for my work and to support myself and my family, I was shooting music too. Started in probably about 1990. I got an assignment from New York Magazine, I think 87, photographing Max Gordon at Village Vanguard. And Joe Henderson was playing that night. So it was a pretty amazing night. And I thought, okay, so that was also another seed that was planted. So then by shooting all these different things for Charlie and George at Newport, also in Jazz Fest in New Orleans, I really got to know musicians. I got to know everyone in the band, and so in a very short time, because I was so keen to learning everything I could about music and musicians on a slightly different level than I had known. It was like graduate school for me. It was like passion. I just could not help myself. I mean, I would shoot a CEO in the morning for a magazine like Fortune, and then I would go to the Village Vanguard at night and shoot Barry Harris playing with his trio. And my wife would say, you're crazy. I said, I know, but I got to do this. So that's kind of how it grew. And ultimately portraitures, the portraitures that I am maybe known for came out of some of these editorial assignments that I would do for Mr. Koyama. He's in Japan, Swing Journal. And one day he was connected to George Wein and Festival Productions.
I'm sorry to interrupt, John. For the people who may not know, George Wein was the Newport Fest producer, and Charlie Bourgeois was a publicist for him, and Max Gordon was the owner of Village Vanguard.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll let you do that. That's good. So anyway, Koyama called me out of the blue one night, and he said, "I want you to photograph Sonny Rollins." And I said, "Wow, okay, yeah, I'll do that." And he said, "So come to his apartment downtown near the World Trade Towers, and I'll meet you there at so and so a time. And don't bring much equipment because I don't want to overwhelm Sonny." And I thought, of course, I brought too much equipment, and I set up this lighting that I had done a preset in my studio, which I had a studio on 55th Street at the time, and immediately at that time, I really hit it off with Sonny. Just me, Kiyoshi Koyama, and Sonny, and I had my assistant with me, but I started taking some pictures that I could feel were, I don't know, there was a power to what I was doing that I hadn't felt when I had photographed, the head of GE or the head of Apple or whatever, whoever I was photographing. It felt different. So that was the beginning. And also, Sonny was very generous with sharing his enthusiasm, and he and I seemed to connect on many levels: visual levels, humor levels, artistic levels. And he was very open to sharing all these things with me. So from that, a lot of different things happened. Records.
I think that's a good segue for us to look at some of your color photos.
Sure.
Starting with this famous one, which I believe is in his biography, correct? Let me share my screen.
Yes, that is a picture that is in the opening page of Sonny's of my book that I did with Bob Blumenthal, the jazz writer, Saxophone Colossus, a portrait of Sonny Rollins. That was so that was shot in 2005. It was basically for his recording the 9/11 concert. I think that's the name of it, right, Terry? Is that the?
Yes.
So by this time I had known Sonny and for 10 or 11, 12 years. And this was one of many setups that I had done that day. And Sonny was always, he and I would always talk about color, what he's going to wear, and
Mm-hmm.
and he said, I have this really cool red suit, and I said, well, bring it, bring it on. So then I always like to match color and mix color, and for me, too much of red is too much of a good thing is wonderful. So
Yeah.
it's sort of, for me, it kind of worked here with Sonny and his gold.
Okay. And this is in your own studio?
No, this is actually in a rented studio
Okay.
down in Soho, because I wanted to do a lot of setups,
I
and
see.
I needed the space, and yeah.
Okay. And this is another sunny picture.
Yeah. This was done 5 years later, June
Mm-hmm.
1st, 2010, just before his, well, it was a few months before his Sunny at 80 concert at the Beacon Theater. And it was in he had a studio in his house. It was in the back
Mm-hmm.
of his house. And he had he would keep all of his diplomas and his recordings and his writings and his books. And his whole life, in a way, was there. It was kind of an amazing place to be. And he shared that with me since the early 90s, when I had photographed him at his home a couple of times before. But I just put up a background, and he was wearing this blue suit. So I took a light and I lit from the top, and I just thought, just let it go and see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of a
Yeah.
moment where his mouth is open. We might have been talking, and I actually think, Howard, that was the year that I won a Jazz Journalist Picture of the Year for that.
Oh, for this one. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, so that was another beautiful moment for me with Sonny. Okay, this goes back. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I was gonna say, my first ever jazz concert in the US was in 1993, and it was Sonny in Syracuse at the Syracuse Jazz Fest, and he had a bandana exactly like that on his head.
So I grew up in the Syracuse area, right? So the Finger Lakes, that's where my family is from. And this was actually in Newport, but I was at the 94 Syracuse Jazz Fest with Sonny. Was he there the year before too?
May have been the 94 then, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was 93, but I may be mistaken. I'm not sure. There was 1 year Gato Barbieri was the headliner.
Yeah, okay.
And the other one was Sonny, and I don't know which one was which, but I remember this headband from that concert.
Yeah, Sonny pretty much ruled the world with headbands for a period of years. This was in Newport, 1993, and I had a very long lens, 300 millimeter, and he was having trouble with his reed, as you can see. So he just let Bob Cranshaw play, or let his drummer play, or whoever was, he was getting that reed ready to put in again, because he was, but he had already played for 20, 30 minutes. And so, you could sort of see his strength and his, what he'd been through. And for me, I think this is also in my book. Ornette Coleman. He had a really beautiful loft on in the 30s in New York City. And this was for a cover of Jazz Times, maybe 2006 or 7. And I brought, 2 or 3 cameras and set up 2 or 3 different setups so I could not waste time with all my lighting changes. And I always was, this was a little bit after digital came, but I was still shooting a lot of film. And I love the Hasselblad camera.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if this is an actual contact sheet or
It is,
you.
yeah. Yeah, it's an
Okay.
actual contact sheet. And he was just such a he was such a beautiful, he had such a beautiful presence. He had such a beautiful personality. Um, what my assistant and I walked up the stairs with all our equipment. He opens the door and he held two cold Heinekens. He said, you have a beer. And so I put down my equipment and then we started drinking the beer. And it was the middle of the afternoon. And, we didn't talk too much, but we just kind of floated around his studio. And that's sometimes the way it happens with portraits for me is that, what am I going to do? Talk to him about, alto saxophone parts? Oh, it's more of a moment of just respecting each other and letting each other work. And this was just I think I had a macro lens on. I just wanted to get close to Ornette. So that's what this is. Matt Wilson. He's an amazing spirit. This guy has, I feel really lucky to have met Matt and worked with him so many times. It was 25 years of me shooting jazz musicians before I actually met Matt. And he said, I always wanted to work with you. And I said, Matt, I always wanted to photograph you. And so we've done maybe 3 or 4 albums together, his albums. And every time we do something new and we try different things. And he's one of the most creative souls that I've ever collaborated with. And I worked with him a lot. He is also on the Jazz Cruise, which I've been doing since 2020. And that is a fairly amazing gig in terms of musicians and the hang with musicians. And Matt's there. So we spend a lot of time together. And we created lots of different things with lots of different colors and suits and formats.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this.
And this is a cruise in the Caribbean?
Yeah. It starts in Miami, goes to Caribbean somewhere. There's the Jazz Cruise, the Blue Note Cruise, Blue Note at Sea. There's also the Smooth Jazz Cruise, which they hired me to do, which is, I've met a lot of really nice people on these. David Sanborn's on there, and there's so many great musicians. Kurt Whalen. It's a really great way to understand how musicians they're the same, they're artists. They're there to enjoy it for themselves and to share it with those of us who love the music.
Hrayr, I have to stop in for a minute. Is your recording still going on? I'm having some trouble with my Zoom.
Let me double check, because last time I tried to record, it said recording in progress.
Okay, that's good. I can't see the chat right now. I'm having some problem with this. I think it's just my Zoom screen. I did something weird. I don't know what it is. But you're still seeing it in speaker mode also?
I'm seeing in speaker mode, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well,
and it says recording in progress.
Okay. Hey, there's Michael Jackson. Hey, Michael Jackson.
Michael's muted.
Okay.
Unusual.
I've unmuted.
Don't be muted, Michael.
Oh, well, everyone's trying to mute me all the bloody time.
Yeah.
John,
yeah.
One of my all-time heroes.
Oh,
I'm on my
Michael.
phone in New York. Yeah, I'm wandering around on the phone, but I'm getting a fantastic reception here. I can hear everything. I can see everything. I'm on my phone in a cab, so this is beautiful. I'm so glad.
That's very, very nice of you.
Let's turn it back over to Hrayr. And Hrayr, if you're getting notifications that people want to get in from the
Mhm.
waiting room, let them in because I'm not seeing those.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I've been
I'm
doing.
gonna mute myself. Go
Okay.
back to John.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you
There's
want,
Sue,
Hey,
the Queen Bee. She kicked my ass because I'd forgotten all about it, John, and you're one of my heroes. But she's
Oh.
like, "What the hell?" So I'm
oh,
here.
what the hell? What the hell? Yeah, you know, even though you're from Leeds and you're a Leeds United fan, I'll forgive you for that.
No, John, I thought you were a Leeds fan too. Come on.
No, Arsenal.
Oh, for God's sake, John, I'm turning off now. I'm out of here.
Yeah. No, I've been an Arsenal fan for you know, my grandfather grew up in Islington.
Oh dear, oh dear. Arsenal, probably the worst after Man United. Anyway, let's get back to first photos. No one wants to
Sorry.
hear.
Yeah.
It could get ugly.
Very ugly. So, should we go back to pictures?
Yes.
Yeah, but
Steve
yeah.
Toure.
Steve Toure. You know, I've known Steve for maybe 25, 30 years, and I did some recordings of his for Telarc and a couple of those, and I think this was for Smoke Jazz. He's also one of these guys who will kind of do anything, and so we did stuff on the Brooklyn Bridge, and you know, bridges. For some reason I love bridges and I love trains and you know, roads and things like that. I don't know why, but Steve was there and we brought it out at dusk and we did a whole bunch of setups, and he's a beautiful collaborator, and he's very, very hip guy too.
oh,
Yeah. Lou Soloff, the great trumpeter, flugelhornist. I had known Lou for many years. I had done a lot of work with Lou with Todd Barkin, the jazz producer and jazz club owner, and maybe 50, 60 records with Todd. 2 or 3 of them were Lou. And I just kept our relationship going. And Lou would call me up and say, "Hey, I need some new pictures. Come to my house or my apartment on 23rd Street." And so this is 23rd Street, walking towards the Hudson River. We did a whole bunch of stuff, but he was such a deeply intelligent and sensitive and funny man that every time we got together, we just had the best time. And so there was this one moment where he was walking away from me, and I was shooting with, I think, like an 85 millimeter lens at f1.2, and so that's why his hat, his flugelhorn, his shoe, they're all sharp. And it wasn't that long after this that Lou passed, and I don't know, this photograph has a lot of meaning for all those reasons.
wow.
Yes. So Jerome Jennings was a drummer who had played with Sonny for a year or two, maybe. I don't know how long he did, but he called me up, asked me to do photographs for his new recording. And so he was prepared, man. So I rented a small studio on 14th Street, and it had a cyc, if you know, a built-in wall that's continuous. And so this looks like it's 2 photographs. It's not, it's one. So I put his drums in front, and then I said, okay, why don't we do some jumping photographs here? And so he said, yeah. So we tried a whole bunch of different things. And there's one of my heroes as a photographer is Philippe Halsman, if you know him. He was from, I think he was from Latvia. He was also French, and he came to the US in the 30s, 40s. And he did a whole series of people jumping. And so that there's some of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen by Halsman of like Marilyn Monroe jumping. Who was the scarecrow in Wizard of Oz? Jack. So anyway, so those are the things that sometimes influence my pictures. The other photographers who have a great idea, and so of course he's only 27 years old or whatever he is, so he can jump really high. And so I did a picture of him. We have a picture of us jumping together, and I look like some crazy old, scarecrow of a man jumping with this young, youthful drummer. So I like to have fun sometimes, and it's not always necessarily about anything. It's just more energy and who he is. He has this guy has unbelievable enthusiasm. One of the warmest, nicest, sweetest guys I've ever met. Also very serious guy, which I love. Yeah, Cecile McLaurin-Salvant. This was actually from her first recording that she had done for Mack Avenue. And she and I had a meeting before the shoot in a restaurant in New York City. And she came up to my house in Westchester County, New York. And so this is on my porch. And so she said, well, what can we do that's maybe a little bit different? I said, well, look, I got some 4x5 Polaroid that's outdated. I've got, we can shoot my Hasselblad. This was 2013 maybe. And why don't we just try a whole bunch of different things? And this is a 4x5 Polaroid that had really been sitting in my refrigerator for, 15 years. But she saw it and she said, yeah, this is beautiful. So this ended up, at least a section of it ended up as the cover of her record, her first record that I think she was nominated for the Grammy. But Cecile is maybe one of the most incredible artists that I've ever worked with. She is completely original. She's very down to earth. She's very intelligent. She's very, very nice. I saw her on the Blue Note at Sea Jazz Cruise last year. Actually, this year. She's just a very, very special human being, and I think she's just going to get better and better as she keeps working and singing.
So Howard remembered the name of the scarecrow. It's Ray Bolger.
Ray Bolger. Thank you, Ray Bolger.
Yeah.
Thank you, Howard.
And Andrew Gilbert left
joke?
a comment for you.
That John is outstanding in his field, like a scarecrow.
Yeah.
That was from you too.
Yeah, I try to be, Michael. I try to be.
Hey, Sue, Alfie's here.
Oh, cool. Alfie, hi.
Alfie. Hi,
I've
Alfie.
told her all about you, John.
Oh, hi, Alfie. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
She looked Roy Hargrove. You met Roy
Yeah, these
Hargrove.
photos are great.
Met Sonny. You met
So you
Cecile.
took that iconic photo of Cecile
She
McLaurin-Salvant.
did it on Polaroid at his house on his porch.
Yes, I did take that picture. Yeah.
It's stunning. I love that
Thank you.
photo.
Thank you.
I really do.
He's super bad, he's Joe. He's top,
Super
top,
bad.
I'm super.
top notch.
The best.
He's one of the best out there.
Oh man, that's enough. That's enough. Mhm.
Alfie's in New York going to the new school now.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, good
Yeah.
for you, Alfie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pardon?
Good for you. I'm glad you're at the new school.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, me too. Me too. I really am. The faculty there is great.
Yeah.
Great. Very excited. Yeah.
So this picture here is at the sound check for Sonny's 80th birthday concert at the Beacon Theater, and this was for me maybe one of the highlights of my photographic life because Sonny was being celebrated with 3,000 adoring fans. I'm sure there was another 3,000 that wanted to get in there. But at this concert, and I'm sure many of you were there. I know some of you were there. Roy Hargrove was playing, and Ornette Coleman, Christian McBride, Roy Haynes, Jim.
I should have been there, John.
Yeah,
But
where were you?
I knew you were handling it. I was taking mushrooms in Las Vegas. at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. What a waste of time. I should have been there, but I knew you had it.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, so it was just one of those magical nights where everyone was so happy to be there with Sonny and to be, people were honored to be there, including Roy. This was before I started getting into video. I actually took my camera, put it on video mode, and shot about a 1.5-minute clip. And that clip ended up in the film about Roy Hargrove.
I haven't seen that yet.
You've seen that. So that I forget the tune, but it's a beautiful collaboration between the two, and that you can really see and hear them playing with each other. And this was just, these are the things as photographers that you hope to have in your life. These are the experiences that you hope to be there. And, people like Terry Hinty and who was Sonny's publicist, and people like that were all around Sonny, they were always very generous with me to allow me to be there, including Sonny himself. But so I was right on stage there. So there was all kinds of amazing things happening that night. And this was just
is this a still from a video, or is this?
Oh no, this is a still. This is a still.
It's an actual photograph. Okay.
Yeah, photo. Yeah. Ahmad Jamal. This is. Let's see. This was a Jazz Fest in New Orleans, maybe 94. This was a Leica camera, which I didn't use too much, except in these situations. And I had this was after the concert. There was this really great stage manager, and his name escapes me right now, in New Orleans. Anybody remember his name? He passed a couple of years ago. Beautiful guy. He would say, John, you can photograph all these musicians if you will. I will bring them backstage for you if we can do one frame with me and the groups. And so I said, that's a deal. So then I got to meet people like Ahmad Jamal, and I got to meet Ellis Marsalis and Johnny Griffin, and just a cast of superlative musicians for maybe 5, 6, 7 years doing this. And Ahmad Jamal was like another one who he had sort of an aura about him, and everybody wanted to be around him. And at this moment, I was very close, and hopefully capture.
You said just a little while ago that you rarely use the Leica and only in circumstances like these. Can you please elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean, and what are the different uses for your cameras?
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many different cameras over the year. I still have them, and sometimes, and everybody who's a jazz photographer or a photographer, they know what a certain camera can do. It's a tool, and some people feel more comfortable with a certain tool. And for me, the Leica was a very quiet camera. It was a very intimate camera because there's no noise or very little noise. There's no shutter because it's it just doesn't have the mirror. So it's I just didn't use it as much as I wanted to because I was into different cameras at the time, but it was very effective here for me. So. Yeah, the Diz. This is 1991's town hall. This is backstage. It was a gathering of maybe 20 different trumpet players, all honoring Doc Cheatham. And so Dizzy was there. I think that's, I don't think, that might be Al Gray in the lower left. That's Marcus Belgrave.
With the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Marcus Belgrave behind Diz. And Dizzy, this was the night that I decided that I was going to dedicate the rest of my life to photographing musicians. Because this was June 1991. I probably could look up the date, but there were all these great performances happening, and most of them I photographed from the second floor of Town Hall with a long lens. But if you go around Town Hall and you go to the second floor, just above the stairs was the green room. And in the green room was a gathering of, everyone came to visit Dizzy, the king.
Mm-hmm.
And Dizzy was telling stories. And Dizzy was, so there were people like Wynton Marsalis, John Faddis, Byron Stripling, Marcus Belgrave. The list goes on. I can't even remember. And they just sat there and they told stories. They looked at each other's horns. They did all these different things that I thought, okay, so this is what community is about. This is what music can do. This is like this power of humanity, if you will, that they were sharing. It wasn't just about the music. It wasn't just about the horn, the instruments or the tunes. It was about who are we, man? And let's share it. Let's talk. Let's tell stories. So when they let me in there, and I was just a fly on the wall, and at one point, Dizzy took my camera, this camera, turned it around, and he pointed at me, and I have a picture of Dizzy, a picture of me by Dizzy. And so that I realized at that point, this was really like a crossroads for me, that I wanted to do this forever. And so it was a very significant night for me.
So the colors you're getting here, the vibrancy of them, are they done in camera or is it post-processing?
They're done in camera. One of the things, the great photographers that I worked with as an assistant in the 80s, they were using almost primarily Kodachrome film, if you remember, slide film.
Yeah.
But the reds, the yellows, the greens. I mean, Paul Simon wrote a tune on it. The colors are spectacular, and so and
then you could print Cibachrome.
Yeah, and you could print Cibachrome. You could. So the other one was Ektachrome, which is also. They were dyes. The colors were. I mean, there's so many great photographers who used this. Pete Turner. There's a lot of great photographers who use the color, and so for me, it became sort of my palette. It's really what I preferred, and I to this day, I still think in color. And there's, when I look at paintings and I look at film, I think about that sort of saturation and what color can do to us. Whether it's a Rothko or whether it's an Ellsworth Kelly, these are the things that sort of informed me my whole life. Hank, this is backstage. This is the green room, the Blue Note. They were honoring Hank and his 85th birthday, maybe, and everybody was there. Absolutely everybody. Oscar Peterson. The list is just too long. But after the whole thing, I had set up this kind of weird velour orange background up in the room, and I just decided to shoot a contact sheet with I think it was a medium format camera, the 6x6 Mamiya, if that means anything to you all. It's also a rangefinder, so it's very quiet. but Hank and we had collaborated on maybe a half a dozen recordings, and so we got to know each other pretty well. And he was just a beautiful, beautiful man, and funny and silly and warm. He shared everything, working together. So we had a great relationship. Two of the greats right there. Wow. Backstage at BB King's, Jimmy Heath, King of Kings, Moody. What can I tell you? There are no words to describe who these musicians are. They're sort of beyond description. They sit so high. Everybody wanted to be there and be around them and share with them. And they have stories going back to, Coltrane and Dizzy and Charlie Parker, you name it. It wasn't just that. It was that this was also, I spent years and years and years with Jimmy Heath backstage at concerts. I did a bunch of portraits of him. Same with Moody. And this is just this for me is, again, what photography can be. I mean, I as a portrait photographer, you can photograph the CEO of a corporation for 10 minutes, right? And people say, wow, that's so-and-so. But if you hang with James Moody for an hour, your life is going to change slightly. You're going to be enriched. You're going to hear probably 8 of the darkest, dirtiest, funniest jokes from Jimmy Heath. And I can't remember any of them, but if you're a joke teller, then they all probably came through Jimmy Heath.
Yeah. He was telling a joke. This was in St. Louis at the bistro about how Rasan Kirk used to play the flute by blowing into it with his nose. And then one day he offered it to him and he said, no, thank you.
That's funny. Yeah. Jimmy was amazing. I photographed him backstage, and he would, well, I think there's another picture, so I won't go into that yet. Yeah. So this is a wonderful musician, Jen Wharton, and I met her at Newport, and we had just met at Newport backstage in those rooms, and we hit it off immediately. So within like a year, she called me up and said, I want to do this recording, and I want to do this cover. So she sort of did a shot on her phone. She showed it to me. So then she came to my house, and I had this kind of crazy black and white rug, and we actually hired a hair and makeup, in this case, a hairstylist. And so she is an original. She is a force of nature. Also very, very clever, very, very funny. This is the name of her band, Bonegasm. So, she's incredible. So I've done like 3 or 4 of her records now, and she has these great ideas. So then when we get together, we figure out how do we build on her idea, and then once we get there, she come up with 2 or 3 ideas, and I've done maybe 3 or 4 of her records now. That's the picture. So this is more of a journalistic shot, a moment backstage at Purchase, where it was actually a tribute to Sonny Rollins' music and the man, and there were all these great saxophone players there. I'm trying to think. So let's see. So so Jimmy was practicing and talking to me, and all of a sudden Ravi Coltrane just pops his head in, and he just stood there, in awe looking at Jimmy, and I thought, snap, there's the shot. So it was almost a spontaneous moment there. So Jimmy Scott, it was through Fantasy Records, Terry and Todd Barkin, that I had done maybe 4 or 5 of Jimmy's recordings. I did a lot of, so let's see. Jimmy was what can I tell you? Jimmy was, I'm getting some sound there. You hear that?
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from.
Okay, that's okay. I'm sorry. I'll get over it. So anyway, Jimmy and I, we did maybe 4 records together, and this one was at my house up in Irvington, New York, and Jimmy, just I don't know, he was just one of the most creative, beautiful subjects that I've ever had, and also very sweet. He met every one of my kids. I have 3 kids, and he met all of them. He knew my wife, and he knew my dog Dizzy, who was a Boston Terrier, and it was just one of those experiences in life that you have a relationship with people, that the fruits of your relationship and the fruits of the work you do together for me was at a very, very high level. Yeah, there's John Faddis and I go back to the early 90s, and I've done a bunch of his records, and his he and I have had a great friendship for all those years, and I've gotten to know his wife and his son Tyler, who is little teeny guy here. But this is Newport. This was the backstage at Newport, and Faddis and I, we've been collaborators for all this time. We've done so many things together. During COVID, nobody was working, so he came up to Westchester, and we had lunch, and we spent 3 hours laughing and joking. And he was telling, I don't think I'd ever heard so many of his stories than that day, and I've known John all these years, but there was a certain relaxation that was happening during that time where we didn't have any place to go, so we're just going to hang out. So John and I have that kind of relationship, going all the way back to Dizzy, his recordings with Clark Terry, his recordings with all these different amazing, Jimmy Heath, Frank West. He would pull me into those worlds, and then I would get to know a lot of these musicians because of John. Yeah, Lena, this was 1995-ish. This was her apartment in New York City. Rodney Jones, the great guitar player and also arranger, was Lena's musical director, and I had done a record for Rodney. He said, I think I know the guy who's going to do your publicity shots, Lena. So he called me to do this. And so I was, to quote Stephen Stills, I was scared shitless, to go and do this. But she was just beautiful. And so this was back in the days where I would bring like a stack of CDs, and we played James Brown, let's see, Al Green, Sly, the Family Stone. And we sang I was singing with Lena for 2-3 hours. So we just had fun, and there was a whole bunch of different things, but she was, it was Lena Horne. I was hanging out with Lena Horne for an afternoon. It was a pretty great experience for me.
So your access to these musicians was primarily, initially at least, through their publicists and mutual friends?
Yeah, I think it's through word of mouth. I think, I think it was because, you know, if someone sees a picture that they like, or if someone has an experience that they like with photography, then they'll think, well, okay, well, here's a short list of people that I like. And, you know, fortunately, I think I was on that list for a number of years, hopefully still am. And so
I don't think it's because of luck or fortune, it's because of skill.
well, that's very nice, but it's, yeah.
He was doing Wakanda Forever and it hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So Nicholas Payton, I think he's 18 here. This was backstage at Newport, 1993, I think. This is before they sort of fixed up that back area. And I had met him. He was in the Jazz Futures 2, which was George Weah's second grouping of musicians in 93 or 92, maybe. And he was in it, and I got to know him a little bit. And so I said, can we just do a portrait back here? And, you know, he was a young man, and he had sort of a grand style to him. And just a nice moment, I think, with a Leica. Oscar. So this is a cover for Downbeat magazine. Oscar Peterson was coming to New York, and so I think this is back in the days when there was a slight budget to take pictures. So I think we rented a suite in a hotel, or maybe it was his suite, and then I rented a piano. We got a grand piano up into the suite because we didn't know, there was no other way to do it. So so I met his little daughter, who was now a grown-up woman, a publicist herself and an artist herself, and she was maybe 8. And my son was there too, Sam. Sam was about 8 or 10, and Sam was a very serious young piano player. And so it was a really beautiful experience for me because I was able to shoot. This was probably with a Hasselblad cropped. I also shot a lot of stuff with an 8x10 camera, which we can go into later. But he was a very warm. This is an amazing experience for me because Oscar Peterson was on the recordings that I heard at 18 when he was playing with Hrayr Attarian in those recordings, Cole Porter music. And I thought, okay, so here I am with Oscar Peterson, you know, I need to pinch myself. So this was one of those moments, again, another incredible moment, and lucky for me, you know. Yeah, Ron. It's a 4x5 image, if that means anything. So I did a 4x5 image camera, and then got very close and did a very tight shot of all the musicians that were there. I think this was Joe Farnsworth's record, and at this recording was Ron was the bass player, and Ron was he was sort of difficult with me a little bit, and he looked at me and he said, "You can take 3 photographs." And I said, "What?" He said, "You can take 3 frames." I said, 3 frames? So he said, "There's only one other photographer in the world that I've ever let take more than 3 or 4 frames." And I said, "Well, who's that?" He said, "Well, there's a photographer named Alan McQueenie." Now, Alan McQueenie was my mentor and the guy who taught me everything about portraiture. So then I said to Ron, I said, "So I just want you to know Alan McQueenie and I had that relationship." He says, "Okay, I'll give you 8 or 10 frames." Or whatever. He was joking, but I think he was just a serious guy who underneath it was really warm and, a beautiful cat. So I was on many recordings with him, all over New York, lots of musicians. He's probably one of the most recorded bass players ever, right? I mean, you guys probably know the numbers, but maybe, and so I was lucky to be around him Also at Newport, I think he was with the VSOP band, with that amazing group. And in Miles' place, it was, and in Freddie's place, it was, it'll come to me, 1992. Anyway, Ron was there, so I've had a lot of experience with him.
Freddie played at Miles's place.
Oh, yeah?
Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard, Tony Williams,
That's it.
Carter, and Wayne Shorter was VSOP.
Right. Barry Harris. Barry Harris and I went all the way back to the early 90s. I did a bunch of recordings for the Japanese labels, Venus, and also there was a couple other labels I forget right now. But Barry and I got to go to his place at Nika's home, where Barry lived for years and years. And this was, so I had maybe half a dozen recordings I had done with Barry. And he came to my studio. He got to know my family. He would come to my studio. I had a little upright piano. We would play there. And so when there was one night in the St. Peter's Church, 2013 or so, called Jazz, what's it called? It was celebrating these two musicians. So Sheila, they're both from Detroit, and I don't know, I set up something in the background, and I put a black background there, and I brought all these different musicians into it. And, you know, this was sort of a high point of the night. And I got to know, this is the first time I'd ever photographed Sheila Jordan. And the love between these two was, I thought, okay, so I just witnessed something extraordinary here. And so it was just a nice moment, nice evening there. This is at Sonny's house in Germantown, New York. And he had a barn in the back behind his house that was sort of beautifully painted in the most gorgeous color. And this is the first time I had done a portrait session up at his house. And this was 95. And what can I tell you? I photographed him about 3 or 4 hours, and he played music for me that whole time. All right, so just think about what that is. Sometimes he would just play the notes and not blow, but he was playing. So, but this was the end of the day, and this is a Hasselblad, I think. And I was so excited, and I think my adrenaline was so high, and my endorphins were so high that I almost put the camera down, and I said, Sonny, you know, this is amazing. All right, the light, the color, you know, spending all this time with you. And he says, in the way that Sonny can do, he laughed and he said, oh, you know, John, it's because you're an artist. And that's not a very good imitation of Sonny, but the reason I'm saying it is because I was 34, 35 at the time. And for me, it was confirmation after all those years with a camera, after all that time that I've spent taking pictures. I've been a professional for 8 years, 9 years. That was the day that I felt confirmed that, oh, you know, maybe I am an artist. You know, maybe if Sonny Rollins is calling me that, then maybe I can start to think of myself on a slightly different level, and then go forward from that. So that was also a milestone experience for me. Yeah. When
you say go forward from that, John, like, yeah, how do you do that as an artist? I understand the validation moment is really a strong one. What does it encourage us to do differently? Or,
well, I think one of the things I've learned after all these years is every great actor, every great writer, every great photographer, even they always talk about relaxation, slowing down, letting stuff in. Don't be too anxious about trying to get to that next level by saying, I'm going to get to that next level. So for me, that's really what it's about. So sometimes I will pursue on my own, like I become obsessed with abstract art, whether it's Ad Reinhardt or Jasper Johns or Ellsworth Kelly or anybody, pop art, minimalist, abstract, doesn't matter. Those things, I look at them, I take them in, and then through osmosis, that's where I go to a higher place. And then I don't exactly know how it works, Howard. I can't say that I have a formula. I just take as much as I can in, and then, and hopefully I'm growing day by day. I still work at it all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So Tony Bennett and we had done 4 or 5 sessions together he had this painting loft on 59th Street and 6th Avenue. And he liked to meet writers and photographers there, film crews, and he would paint there. And then he would also we did a lot of sessions, and we got to know each other on that level for a lot of experiences. And one of the pictures that I had taken of him, he used on the cover of his book. And it came out almost the same time that I had done the book about Sonny. And so I have a nice picture of us looking at each other's books and sharing each other's books. And when I heard Tony talk about Louis Armstrong, and when I heard him talk about musicians on such an intensely intelligent and important level, that's when this was just a film I had seen on then I realized, oh, okay, Tony, he's the man. He's not just a pretty voice and so when I was with him, I would try to take in the things that he would say, and he would talk to me about his painting, and he would talk to me about people, and he would talk to me on these levels that had nothing to do with what we were doing. I was taking his picture. It was like this intimacy that if you're lucky, you can have that almost every time when you're doing portraits of people.
Is this with the medium format?
No, this is maybe an 85 millimeter Canon X 1.2, so it's wide open. It's probably a color backdrop that I had brought, and this window light from 59th Street coming in, hitting him in his eyes. Wallace Roney, that's who I was thinking of, VSOP. So Wallace, I got so excited in the 90s about doing jazz musicians that all these different magazines that I was working for, Newsweek, New York, Time, Entertainment Weekly, I pitched the idea of photographing jazz musicians. And so Newsweek bought it, and they said, okay, we're going to do 4 musicians, and we're going to do a story on them. And Wallace was one of them. Faddis was another. I think there was a few others, but this was the first one. And they ended up not, of course, running the story at all, which really upset me. But Wallace was, he was a really beautiful portrait subject, and quiet and powerful at the same time. He had a studio on like 17th, 18th Street. This was outside. The light had just come in. This is again Kodachrome with probably maybe a Nikon, which I was using then, 94. Yeah, one of the things happen sometimes backstage during concerts, and this was Winton and Mulgrew, and this was at Lincoln Center. And I would try to be a fly on the wall in these situations, and try not to get in the way. And I like these quiet moments because this is what happens. All of you have probably seen it, felt it, been there. And it's sometimes one of the things that there's a communication there between these two as they're working out a tune, whether it's one that they just played or that they're going to play, or maybe it's none of that. It's just I like being there sometimes and seeing this. This is a cover of Downbeat right in front of Jazz at Lincoln Center. This is a kind of a trick that I used. So that's a cover of Jazz Times. Let's see. What you do is you have a zoom lens, right? You flash the subject and then you zoom the camera.
Back, yeah.
The lens, right? So it's a kind of a corny idea. It's a little bit retro 60s, 70s, but when you have the traffic and the lights, it kind of works. So that's kind of technically that's what's going on here. But I had met Winton in the early 90s, and we had done a bunch of portraits together and worked together. But this night, and he wasn't always the easiest guy to work with, just because he was in his own world sometimes. And this night we were out on the street and he was so relaxed, and we were talking about our children who were about the same age. And it was like one of the most pleasant experiences that I'd ever had outside photographing a musician, where you're kind of in the zone. When you thought that you were kind of nervous about what you were going to expect.
Yeah.
Am I talking?
Howard called this Spike Lee effect.
What'd you call it?
Howard called it Spike Lee effect. The zooming.
Oh, Spike Lee. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He has that signature shot where he's
right.
people on scooters or something on slides and
yeah. But also Martin Scorsese does it a lot with the zoom thing, where you have this weird effect, and it can be powerful sometimes.
So you have also some black and white and sepia shots.
Yeah.
Although your work seems to pop out in color. So I want to just go over a few of those, starting with the black and white.
Sure. I'm not seeing anything. It's not up yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just up, and I'm going to share.
Sure.
I'm going to go just through a few of the black and white, and then just a couple of the sepia.
Okay, so Hank and Elvin, this was a recording in 2002, and I had worked with in Sony Japan on a bunch of recordings, and so I did a picture of the Smothers Brothers for Us magazine once, and so I thought of that when I got the two of them together. This was before or after a session, and I thought, I said, can we do something where your heads overlap, or can we do something where I can see the two of you? And so I didn't even tell them how to do that. They just kind of put their heads together and snap. That was the shot. And it was a moment that they ended up using it on the cover of the recording. And for me, it's one of my most important pictures, I think, that I've ever taken, because of the magnitude of the two musicians and the moment. Jeff Levinson, a producer, writer that I work with a lot, he organized this session at Steinway and so McCoy Tyner, we did a whole bunch of stuff here with McCoy, and it was one of those moments, one of those afternoons where you spend with a musician, you think, okay, so this is McCoy Tyner that I'm talking to. And you're kind of, it's an out of body experience, but every once in a while you got to bring yourself back into reality, realize that you have to connect yourself. So we had a lot of great moments from this shoot. Roy Hargrove, he did this is an early recording, 1995. Anyway, I'll tell you a really quick story. I had done, this was all done with a Hasselblad. I had a lighting set up. This was like a 3 a.m. shoot at Clinton recording studio. And for some reason, that was the only time all the musicians could get there. So I did a whole bunch of pictures with a camera set up where I was using a sync and then I would shoot a Polaroid. I did the whole shoot. I looked at the Polaroid was blank. It was blank. And I realized that the 3 or 4 rolls that I had shot had nothing on them, nothing. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. So Roy had packed up his horn. Winton was there, and they were walking out the door. I literally grabbed both of them and I said, Roy, I had a problem. It didn't work. Can you sit for me just for 2 minutes? And he looked at me and he said, no, and then I asked him again. I said, Roy, please, I was hired by Verve to do this. I can't come back with nothing. He said, no, I can't do it. So finally I got him to do it. I think the 3rd time, and he sat down. I did a shot of he and Winton. I think I only got 3 frames with them. And then Roy he was there. He just kept going. So they ended up shooting more and more. I think I got 3 or 4 rolls with him. And this was a contact sheet. And sometimes you have to persevere, even though you're messing up.
I want to go, because of sake of time, to the sepia ones. We'll go over a few of the sepia ones. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, so the sepia Polaroid is an 8x10 camera. So think about the big cameras that Matthew Brady would use, where you take a big cloth, put it over your head, you get 1 sheet of film, you put it in, you take it out, you snap it. So one of my great assistants that I was working with in the late 90s, he was doing a lot of fashion stuff with a great photographer. And he said, you got to try this camera. And so I said, no. So finally I tried it and I started using it. And it had a quality that was so beautiful, because the lens was so big, and the camera the quality was so special. And the color that came out of it was mixing a color negative and a black and white positive. You put it through a roller and you get this incredible sepia image.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
these are not done in a computer.
No. This is done. These are Polaroids, one of a kind.
Yeah.
So I would bring it to sessions. I would do it for record covers, and you might get 3 or 4 frames. And this, I think, ended up as the cover of their recording. I think it was Clark's recording, maybe. I think it was called Friendship. Anyway, the quality of it is special, and the tones are special. And I used it for 10 years. And not only that, what the colors and the camera itself, I would take it to some of the magazines and corporations that I would shoot for. I say, hey, we should try and shoot it this. And they'd say, well, you can't do that. And I would end up doing it. So, I would be hired by Money Magazine to photograph 10 hedge fund money managers all over the country with this camera. And it came out of my jazz pursuits. So it was like this nice transfer of commercial work and artistic work.
And one last one.
Yeah. Henry Grimes. I met him at a loft party, and I talked to his girlfriend, I think, who then maybe became his wife. And I said, I'd love to photograph Henry. And she just called one day and says, I can come over to your studio, and I said, great, come on over. And he brought his beautiful base olive oil. It was painted green, and this was what the sepia can do, and this is what the 8x10 camera can do, because it has a very selective focus, and it doesn't respond very well to reds. It responds very well to blues. So blue eyes become lighter, reds become darker, and it has this kind of crazy, has its own wavelength of color. Yeah.
Well, is there any other photo, John, that you want me to show from the black and white and sepia collection? Because we went over all the colors.
Yeah, it's up to you. I really okay. I mean, does anybody have any questions, or is there anything I've been talking way too much, so maybe.
Yeah, I have a question, John. First of all, this is just wonderful work you've done.
Thank you.
And I've got goosebumps with lots of them. But I want to know, what's your philosophy regarding color, black and white, or sepia? Like the color photos are incredible. But I hear a lot of photographers talking about, oh, I only shoot black and white. I'm saying, but the world isn't black and white. You know what? And you can go from color to black and white, but you can't go from black and white to color. So,
that's right.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, every shoot is different, and I think I heard a great photographer once, Ralph Gibson. I don't know if you know his work. He talked about color and black and white this way. He said, color is a representation of what is reality. Green is green, red is red, blues are blues, but it's not actually the color. But he says, but as soon as you take it out, you're stepping away into a slightly more abstract world. And so it becomes tonality, and for me, sometimes the black and white works, and sometimes I'll shoot both, and I never really know why I do it. I think mostly in color, but I love shooting black and white too. The sepia was a very special process, but they don't make that film anymore. I don't know if that answers your question. I can't say that I love one or the other, but I dream in color. I literally dream in color. And I think I probably all of you have this feeling. When I was a little boy in my grandfather's house, he had a color wheel above a door, and it was the 6 colors, and they were opposites. And I would stare at that, and it had meaning for me as like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. I think that those kinds of early experiences that you have when your mind is open, when you are a child and you're taking it in, they inform you for the rest of your life if you're lucky. And I think that's why color for me is so special. And that's why I'm in love with so many abstract painters and sculptors.
Well, I was a lifetime friend of, you heard of Teenie Harris in Pittsburgh. The great Teenie Harris. Well, we were lifetime friends, although he's my father's age. But I've tried to shoot pictures, and I've got 100,000 pictures here. Most of them are bad, but his pictures were done with a medium format black and white, because that's the best camera they had at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
The color films weren't stable.
That's true.
And he was shooting for the newspaper.
Yeah.
So, but I hear people talking about, oh, it looks more historical if it's black and white, or those kind of philosophical things.
Well, in terms of jazz, you're right on. If you think of William Gottlieb doing all those interviews that he would do, he would do the stories, and then he would take the picture. And he wouldn't take a lot of pictures, but he only had like a speed graphic, that was a 4x5 camera. And it was really the only thing that was available to him. Same with Herman Leonard, the great Herman Leonard. Herman Leonard would go into a club, and he said he would have, 6 flash bulbs. So he'd have to set up maybe 3 pictures, right? So then he was very careful, and he only used black and white because that was the only, as you say, it was the only film that was available. So those Herman Leonard pictures are, in my opinion, the best jazz photographs ever taken. For me, he is the king. He is at the top. So if he had color film available to him at that point in 1945, 1948, who knows what Herman could have done. So I think it's the tools that we have, the ways that it inform our work.
This was
any final questions?
I just wanted to say that this was a tremendously rich, educational, inspirational, goosebump presentation. Thank you so much, John Abbott, for
Thank you.
enriching our beloved jazz community.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I really appreciate that. It's my pleasure to be there with all of you and to
I have one more quick question. This
Go ahead.
is an economic question. It's only at jazz concerts that I hear people say, no cameras, no tape recorders, no nothing. Don't take pictures of jazz people. And yet the politicians and the athletes, they got the paparazzi all over them, and they're making millions of dollars, and the jazz musicians are still starving. Do you see any parallels in there? Because I don't know why I wouldn't want my picture taken if I'm performing. I don't understand it.
You know, I can't really answer that. I don't really know. I think there's just been there's just too many cameras out there now. And I hate to say this, but images have been cheapened with the iPhones and the motor drives. And so everybody has a camera, can snap and say, I've got this. And I'm not saying that there aren't so many talented people with iPhones, you know, because I get ideas from Instagram for someone who's never had a photo class in their life because they have a good. So I can't really answer that. I can't really speak to that in terms of musicians.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been
Well,
very
thank you
enlightening.
all. Thank you all for coming, and thanks, John. It was really one of the best sessions we've done here. And we'll see you all hopefully in December.